Welcome to Japan Seikatsu. I'm Ian, and today I would like to speak about the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami and reflect upon the 10th anniversary since that event on March 11th, 2011. I was a jet teaching English as an ALT at the time in Shikoku in Tokushima Ken. It was very far removed from the Tohoku region, so my life was never in danger. My experience is very different from those that were in the line of real danger. In fact, it started as a joyous day. It was the graduation at my junior high school for the third year students, and they were a terrific class. It was a sunny day, and we had the graduation, and the students left at around lunchtime, and so the first years and second years were studying quietly in their homerooms, and most of the teachers were in the teacher's room, which is where I was. The earthquake occurred at 2:48, and the English teacher actually was the first to tell me that there has been a very large earthquake, and they turned on the TV in the teacher's lounge, which I never even realized we had a TV, but we just watched, and I can't. It's a surreal thing to watch occur, similar maybe to 9/11, when it just does not feel real. And some of the memories that has stuck with me was just seeing the tsunami from a helicopter view, and you're seeing it go through towns, and you're seeing it go through schools, and these schools look very similar to the schools that I was teaching at, and you think that there are students in these schools, there are people in these homes. Really a heartbreaking event. We finished school. I remember I got together with two other ALTs from different schools, and we were talking about trying to process what had happened. I was able to communicate back to family in the U.S. that my region was not affected. I was safe. But I remember there was some difficulty accessing, I think it was Facebook. So I do remember, I believe my sister posted on my Facebook that, Ian is safe, and that got the word out to family members. And we finished dinner. We went back to our homes, and I remember I turned on the TV, and at that point the focus was on the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear reactor, which was melting down. And it was just still to this day, 10 years later, we've had an earthquake, a tsunami, and now there's a nuclear incident. It was just surreal is the only word that I can really grab. Then over the next few days, it was quite hairy. It was quite you really didn't know what was going to happen. The nuclear situation was unstable. In fact, the prime minister at the time later said in an interview that the idea of a partial evacuation of Tokyo was on the table, and it's moments like this that you realize how fragile society can be. It's in terms of food supplies or oil, gas supplies, working ATMs, etc. So, but they, everything kind of continued to work. Where I was in Shikoku, there were people getting, extra rice and loading up at the supermarket, but more or less there was access to gasoline, there was access to food, which I think was a very different situation in the Tokyo region and northern Japan and Tohoku. I then, later in July, went up to Ishinomaki in order to volunteer with some others and help clean up some of the areas that were affected by the tsunami and earthquake. And I'll share now on the screen. As you can see, it was still scenes that I'd never imagined I would see. Just entire towns, houses, lives destroyed. You could get a sense of the power of the tsunami by automobiles just tossed about, but you also saw signs of the destruction to humanity that had occurred. Be it this picture I have here was a Nintendo in the rubble, cleaning up this riverway in a town that was destroyed by the tsunami. There was photo albums, toys and shoes and clothes and stuff that you'd never expect to see outside of homes. I have here, you can see that literally the houses were swept and taken a mile up the road, and the houses were just taken off of their foundation. Here is this steps up to a home with the home is gone. And there was schools. There were schools that obviously had been devastated by the earthquake. And as a teacher, as an ALT, that hits you particularly hard. One of the programs that I watched recently was an NHK World program, and I have a link down below. I highly recommend giving it a watch. And it's about 10 years after 3/11, and they follow some students of an American jet ALT, Taylor Anderson, who tragically lost her life in the tsunami. And the student, one student in particular, that was quite moving for me, was talking about how Taylor had positively inspired her and influenced her to dream and to live her dreams. And Taylor had actually written a lot of letters to this student. The student still had those letters and treasured those letters, and went on to pursue her dream of medicine and healthcare, and is pursuing that to this day. And you realize this young person who is 24 years old, and the student says, I'm now older than Taylor Sensei was. The student is now 26 years old. And within such a short life, Taylor had such a big impact on so many people and left such a positive legacy. And this is something that is, I think, unique to teachers, that you have the opportunity to positively influence the younger generation, to inspire the younger generation, to be an example for younger people. And not just one individual, but many, many individuals. And it really gives meaning to life, leaving that positive legacy. I remember when the earthquake happened, and members of the jet community were lost. I remember this story, but seeing now 10 years later, it's just, you realize how young most jets are, how young I was, and what a positive influence they can have on children that then grow up and pursue these dreams. And so I say that as a message for, I know many in the community are jets or are pursuing the jet program or being ALTs or teaching English in Japan, that, you know, it's really quite a special job that has a lot of meaning, to be able to be a mentor for somebody, or help coach somebody, or to be able to help and inspire. And that's something that I think we should all keep in mind. I spoke earlier about when in July I went up to Ishinomaki, and Taylor Anderson, I believe, was a jet in that same area. And you know, it's what in that time of tragedy, there were stories of volunteers from Japanese companies would send volunteers to help with the cleanup, and, you know, private citizens, and on the volunteer group that I was on, I mean, there was an individual that flew from Hong Kong to be there. There was an individual that flew from California. We had somebody from England, from all over Japan. But there were individuals that were finding large amounts of money. You know, a lot of Japanese they're savers and they're conservative, and they literally had tens of thousands of dollars, some of them saved in their house or under the tatami mat or in a safe. And when the tsunami came, this got washed all over, and many millions of dollars in aggregate were returned by volunteers to the local police. And on that same note, I remember watching the lines after the disaster had first started. There was long lines to get gasoline, long lines to wait in stores, and you're watching this imagery of a Japanese patiently waiting and not cutting the line, and trying to keep their calm and to collectively help one another. And that was really quite inspiring to me, and that really left it left a big impact. And I still think of that to this day, about how the Japanese responded to this terrible tragedy. And I think about, you know, what do we, as I said earlier, many of you are pursuing the JET program or living in Japan, and, you know, the lessons from an event like this, and it's the importance of doing what you can to be prepared. So if there is a natural disaster, you know what to do and you have a plan. You may have a meeting place. It's always a good idea to have some food, some water, some savings, some cash. You know, I have my mother-in-law, after this event, it was so difficult to get gasoline that still to this day, 10 years later, she'll never allow the gas tank to go below half full. I mean, this seriously changed people's behavior forever. And it's here we are. It's 2021, and we're now all in another very difficult period in history. And I think it, again, just focuses the mind on what is most important, that life is short and it is precious. And we need to do our best to be kind and to leave a positive legacy and to do work that is meaningful. That's really what's most important. That's why we're here. So I leave you with that. My prayers and thoughts are with all of the people that were affected by this terrible disaster that happened 10 years ago. And I find much inspiration by seeing the spirit of the Japanese rebuild from this devastating blow. And it gives me hope that we globally will rebuild from the current difficulty that we're going through. So with that, I wish you all the best, and thank you.